they've constantly got.
Oh, it's going now, Brett. Sorry. I just pushed the button again.
Oh,
I mean, we weren't
live.
talking about anything. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you would think that Google will get their act together. I'm waiting for it now because we were just having problems getting started. I'm gonna see where. I mean, what I'm thinking is now we'll be going, get a good talk going. It'll just like take a big dump. We'll find out together. How was your week, Brett?
Well, exhausting. What I thought was a cold was more than likely a flu. It still hasn't left me. But I'm feeling much better than I did. I mean, it's just taking an age and a half to go. And then I did the week that was, which I believe was your favorite week that was ever.
It's on my list. No jokes.
Except for one particular item.
I love the sulfur bit, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, but and yeah, that kind of took the last ounce of energy out of me, and then today I really just feel pretty sort of chewed up. And yourself?
Well, that was a full-on 30-minute piece.
Yes, that was again a full-on 30-minute piece. Yes, I must try and work on keeping these things shorter.
Oh no, man. No, I wasn't saying that. Don't. I mean, do what you got to do, but they're nice when it's a good chunk like that, and you can take time to fill it in on some issues. I think you were saying something about maybe covering. What'd you say? More or fewer? You're talking about changing the amount.
One may try to do fewer but more in depth. But I'll sort of have to see how we go, because in that case I kind of lose some of the fun stuff which I quite like putting in. You know, things like blue sulfur fires and people building giant Nerf guns instead of working at NASA.
Amazing. That was incredible. Because he was just he cut that watermelon in half with the power soaker. It's like would cut a human being's arm off, man.
Yes, yeah. I think it said in the article that the water leaves the jet at 272 miles per hour.
Oh gosh.
So yes, hence I said this is why we have NASA, because we need to keep boffins like that busy, because otherwise this is the sort of stuff they get up to.
Oh, mercy's sake. Oh man. I've just been working this last few days and keeping my eye on the probably the politics more than anything. It's made me a little bit run down, I guess. I'm just getting.
You don't sound your energetic self.
Oh well, I was working really hard too. That's probably the most of it. I'm relaxing, man. I'm glad to have a little moment to take and kick back. But on top of that, on top of weeding and working outside for a couple days, I mean, this thing is bullshit, Britisher. It doesn't matter to me how you frame it. You have an over anxious son that like I was telling you before we pushed the button, that's already done some things that are crazy. He went to Aspen, Colorado, and worked as a bartender for some years. I believe he lived in the woods. Tried to pretend he was poor. And I don't. Here's the deal. Mueller needs to get on the whip and find whatever he's going to find and bring it to bear so that things can move on and move forward. And CNN can talk about something else.
I don't think CNN is going to stop talking about this or Russia anytime soon. But I think when it comes to, the problem you have when it comes to someone like Mueller is that these things move very, very slowly. These kind of inquiries, they have to be, double, treble, and quadruple checked everything. And they then also will find new strands of investigation, as the guy did who was looking at Bill Clinton, and then wonder whether they actually want to pursue those things or not. This is one of the problems, that once you have an investigation like this going, it becomes almost a kind of self-perpetuating project.
It is. That's what it's meant to be at base, bro. That's what it's meant to be at base. And yes, Kenneth Starr what they ended up coming out with is that Bill Clinton said, I did not have sex with that woman.
Yeah.
And then, so they got him for perjury. They were trying to get him for perjury because he got the little nook. And,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. They're going to find, and they're going to find something. Because as much as anybody wants to dog Hillary, go ahead. Hillary, while Bill was doing his thing, was the evil henchman. Bill, he's a nice guy. It's kind of hard to find trash on him, except for he likes to hump young girls. Well, of age, young girls, but I mean, he likes to hump young women.
Well, yes,
That's
but
pretty much it.
I think now with this particular story, I think your problem is that you think there is just not really that much to it. You think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, don't you?
Oh, yeah, and the way you present it, because here we go. You did mention in the past about Hillary and the whole charging people more than what they expected to pay for donations, and that she probably didn't know about it because it's a big organization, and this and that. Well, I would say the same thing about Trump, because as I said, Donald Trump Jr. I don't think he runs to daddy and tells him everything that's going on, especially if there's any question in it. Steve Bannon, I know he don't. He's sneaky.
Well,
Jared Kushner's coming out there and working with MSNBC and giving them tweets and stuff, and mounting out of a molehill in this. If it connects to Donald Trump personally, yeah, there's a problem. If it connects directly to his campaign, he can still shrug that off pretty easily.
Well, put it like this. I mean, first on the Hillary Clinton front, when it came to that overcharging people, in order to sort of clear this up for people, I believe there was something you told us about whereby people could donate to Hillary Clinton.
That was Logical Mind Stream.
It could leave sort of their credit card details and things like that, so they could be debited, and then later they found they had been debited several times. Now, at the time, I sort of said I wouldn't put it past her. And you sort of said she was a complete control freak and would therefore know about these things. And I sort of said, well, that is well possible, but is it likely? And my feeling there was that it was more likely that she didn't specifically authorize something like that. But if I were to see evidence that she had done, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, then is it like
that is really my view on it with Hillary Clinton and that overcharging thing? So I'm perhaps not quite as one-sided as you put me, as you portray me there.
Oh well, but so then you got to admit, then, sir, then it's very unlikely that Trump knew about this.
No, I think in this,
you're one-sided on it.
No, I think in this case, the reason is not that one thing is Hillary and one thing is Trump. I think it's because we're looking at different circumstances.
That's what you say on every circumstance.
Well, no, but I think in this case we're looking at pretty much, Trump top brass going to this meeting. And you sort of think, well, hang on a moment, okay, Bannon wasn't there and Trump wasn't there. But other than that, everybody else was there. And you sort of feel, well, that does look highly suspicious. If it were, as they're trying to portray it, Donald Trump Jr. just going off on a hunch to sort of see what's going on, then why were all the others there? So that does make it suspect.
Well, I'm trying to think of the term. It's this research sharing. And I mean, I would just
opposition research. I think they've been trying to sort of
opposition research. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I don't really buy that.
Oh, that's what it is. Absolutely, what it is.
And as you know, when I spoke about this on the week that was, I actually spent more time on the Ukrainian side in order to try and look into that, because this is being used as what about the Ukraine? So Alexandra Chalupa looked at the Ukrainian side thing, and I kind of came to the same conclusion that, yes, she shouldn't really have been doing what she was doing. She is definitely a significant figure because her projects have been, was it something like $400,000 or something like that? So clearly,
you know what a chalupa is?
Clearly she is not some, minor figure in the Democrats, but she is not the same thing as three major figures of the campaign going off with, bizarrely, a former Soviet intelligence officer in tow.
Oh
To
man,
meet,
no,
you
there's a
know,
lot.
that makes it look really bizarre.
Oh
And
man, there are a dime a dozen.
and yes, of course. And I think that's where you have to kind of look at it and go, what exactly went on there? And I think that is
Couldn't be
where
nothing.
that that is where I think they kind of need to explain what exactly went on.
No, British.
And
He already did. He already explained exactly what went on. I'm talking about adoption. This thing.
yeah,
It was in my opinion, is that this was probably something that was planned from the other side to say, let's see if we can set him up, saying all this.
well, that was the Chernovich angle that you kind of showed me that clip, didn't you?
Well, I'm buying that pretty like that could be a possibility. I'm not saying it happened.
You showed me that Chernovich angle. Now, that to me looked very strange because, oh, look at her here at this meeting. Oh, look at her here at this meeting. And you thought, hang on a moment, where has he, in the space of how many hours, found all this material? How many people would you need to have to trawl through how much footage in order to be able to find that?
They got it. They did it.
Yes, but do you understand what I mean? So you can't help but feel that it was almost as if they were prepared. Do you understand my thinking there?
Well,
Because
yeah, I mean, but these people are, that's their job. Mike Cernovich and that organization, that's what they do, Brett. They're up all night. 10 of them working on the project. That's what they do.
Yeah, I think you would. This is almost kind of one of these, if you have a million monkeys on a million typewriters kind of thing.
No. Plus, you get Shakespeare? No.
Yeah. But plus at the same time, you just sort of think, what does it actually, because what we got in that piece by Chernovich, in which he kind of said, look, here she is on a demonstration, on a kind of anti-Trump demonstration. Here she is at some leftist gathering listening to some leftist speaker. And you think, yes, and what exactly does this prove? Why does this disprove that she might have connections to Putin? This is what I don't understand. One is trying to put a spin on it. One is entirely suggestive in that piece, rather than
Donald
actually.
Trump goes to dinner with some of his friends that happen to work on a campaign, and he happens to go to dinner with this lawyer and some dude that says he worked for the KGB or whatever. They talk about some adoption guff, and then they all leave and basically was lunch, and so there's there's nothing there.
Yes, but they didn't go there.
Burger. I hope they had a something burger there at the restaurant.
They didn't go there in order to talk about adoption, did they?
No, they went there. No, they went there because they thought that they had some dirt on and if they did have dirt on Hillary and they'd have taken it, there was nothing wrong with that either. It's the sharing thing we talked about.
No, as I say, if they basically take something from the Russian government, this is the same thing.
Phrase without laughing.
This is the same thing with Chalupa and the Ukrainian government. If you basically take something from a foreign government that helps you in an election campaign, that is the same thing as taking money.
Okay, not really. Well, then everybody needs to go to prison.
Well, no, I mean, think of it like this. How much money would you need to spend?
It's nothing of value. There's very
negative advertising. How much money would you need to spend in negative advertising in order to smear your candidate?
But if you find out bad information,
just listen to this point, Oga. How much money would you need to spend in negative advertising in order to smear your opponent, to cause as much damage as you would if you are given such information? So as such, this has actually got a value that has an equivalency in actual monetary value.
Well, thank goodness nothing came of it, so the well-meaning fools didn't get in any trouble.
Well, whether it is against the law or not is, to my mind, not even that clear. It could be. But
It's not against
whether
the
it
law.
is or not isn't even really that important. I think any American, be he a Republican or a Democrat, should actually be quite shocked at this, in just the same
Oh,
way
I'm
as
shocked.
any American should be shocked at what Hillary Clinton got up to.
I'm shocked at the outcry over it. I mean, do
Well,
I
no,
think it's
well,
bad? I think it's bad, but what I think mainly is going on is folks that have really wanted there to be something other than a salacious tweet, and now they have this wanting so bad, they're wringing their hands and going, "We got him now. We've got him right with our clutches. We got him right where we want him, and now we're going to
well, no,
just
I think
ring him."
what you're looking at is that now there is something there to justify.
Not for Trump. There's nothing there for the people involved because there's no
Well,
crime
no,
has been committed whatsoever.
previously there has never been anything to this story, and you will remember this. I said time and time again, there is nothing to the Russia story.
Well, there still isn't.
Now there is.
Well, what though? What is there? What is
Well,
there?
because
This
now
special
one
Messiah
knows.
and
Now
some ambiguous
President
dude.
Pryor, yes,
These
but
plants, these Democrat
more than
plants that
that,
they
we
put in there.
know that there was intent
This
by
Loretta Lynch.
Trump.
Hey, Loretta Lynch cleared this lady on a special visa. Brett, doesn't that make her okay?
So what?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. So what? He met with somebody that has been vetted to the point where they were given a special pass to come and be an American. And now you've got to be, xenophobic on me and say because she's Russian it makes her bad. Or this poor chap
No,
over
this
here
has nothing
just
to do
happened
with
to
her
work for
being
the
Russian.
KGB. He just happened to work for the
You're
KGB,
being
and
a
now
bit facetious
it's
here.
ties him with Russia in the Kremlin.
The fact that there is an email which Donald Trump Jr. himself releases in order to dare I say it, trump the New York Times, in which it is basically said that she is prepared to provide information that comes from the Russian government. Now, we have therefore something in black and white saying that. So basically, this is no longer just fantasy. This isn't CNN just making stuff up. Now there is actually something there saying that. Now, whether that is true or not.
The headline. I got the headline. Don Trump Jr. and Veselnitskaya go to lunch and CNN gets a nothing burger.
Well, no, all we know is that they say that nothing happened. But remember, but remember, were it not for the New York Times, Donald Trump would never have said that the meeting itself ever happened. He only released it because he was kind of forced to.
Well, would you tell him? What would you do in this situation?
Well, yes, but this is just the point. So basically,
I'm just asking you, what would you do, British? Personally, what would you do if you were trying to help?
I would never have gone to that meeting.
Huh?
I would never have gone to that meeting.
Though. You went there. You decided that you were going to try to help Dad out, man. And they're just some good old boys. Just some dirt on Clinton, and then nothing happened. But what would you do at that point?
Well, I really, what do you mean? I mean, you're asking me what I would do to follow up on something that I wouldn't do.
Put it this way: everybody has something. Everybody. And you included, myself, everybody is something.
So this is the one, what you're trying to say is this is the one sin of an otherwise perfect life of Paul Manafort.
Not from Don Jr. No,
is it Gerald or is it Jared Kushner?
Oh, not Jared Kushner, man. Bannon
he was there.
Bannon's a saint.
Bannon is a saint.
God bless him, that alt-right son of a bitch. God bless his soul. I hope he lives to be 110. But no, I like Steve Bannon, man. I like Milo Yiannopoulos too. I like Breitbart. I mean, they murdered Breitbart. We probably can't talk about that because we call conspiracy theorists. He's going to vet Obama and he'd turn up dead. I'm probably turn up dead, man. Tomorrow for this, what I've been saying, because Trump didn't do nothing. No, but British, you understand that somewhere between what I've been saying and where you're at is where I lie. I'm playing the complete devil's advocate because holy crap. It really feels to me, I say it again, that yourself and a lot of folks, as soon as this popped out, it's not only, well, maybe something could be happening here, regardless of what it may be. This is what I think about. It's like, ooh.
Well, no, you see, this is where you and I differ, because you are looking at this going, oh, listen to them all caterwauling. They're trying to make something out of nothing. Whereas I look at it and I go, people, where is the outrage? And I mean, really,
Oh,
the
I'm
outrage.
outraged.
Well, no, just in the same
About the
way as I
caterwauling.
was just as I was out, that I was wondering, where is the outrage with Hillary Clinton? Because to this day, you can ask the Democrats, and the Democrats will go, "Oh, she didn't do anything wrong. She's perfect."
Well,
And this is where I really fear for the whole system over there, because what is happening here now is that not only are the politicians, not only are we used to the fact that all the politicians lie, but now the two tribes are beginning to lie on behalf of their politicians.
so now we are going to talk about conspiracy theories. Is that what? Because you're talking about the right-left paradigm.
Well, no, but this isn't, basically, this is what we are actually seeing happening here. That basically everybody is becoming so polarized that they are now actually beginning to lie. Basically, they no longer wish to in any way associate with anyone or anything.
And you got rules for radicals being applied
their
to society.
hero look bad, whether that be Hillary Clinton or that be Donald Trump. And that is very, very worrying. That basically, when people hear of the outrageous corruption of Hillary Clinton, they should be outraged, whether they are Republicans or whether they are Democrats. But what is so terrifying is that the Democrats are not, because they're not willing to be outraged, because they feel.
What has Donald Trump done that I should be outraged for, sir?
This meeting should never have happened.
With Donald Trump, the president.
Yes, because, I mean, come off it. Nobody in their right minds looks at what happened here and doesn't believe he didn't know about it.
Oh, yeah, no idea. I don't think Don Jr. I already made
of course.
Why too? You don't. You don't see.
You do know that you're being facetious here, don't you? No, I mean, seriously.
No, hear me out, then, Brett. No, because you have. Think about Ivana right now and Eric. You don't hear none of this stuff. You don't even hear none of this stuff from Tiffany, from the other girl. Because she just is glad she's got a rich daddy and she's out of it, man. Pay me, sucker. And then Ivanka, she's steadfast and she knows she wouldn't be involved in this. And then Eric, I think the same thing. Don Jr., a loose cannon. He's Mr. I want to go to Colorado and be a bartender and be involved with Bannon.
Paul Manafort was Donald Trump's campaign chairman.
So you're saying that this meeting, because of this meeting,
was a loose cannon, was it?
Donald Trump, based on what, that he may have known about this?
No, what I'm trying to say to you is that the loose cannon narrative does not work. You cannot have a meeting where you've got Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort.
Jared Kushner was leaking stuff out to MSNBC.
And just say that this is just that this is just created on, that this was just a spur of the moment thing by a loose cannon in the family.
That's what I said, yeah.
Yeah, but this doesn't work, not with the campaign chairman present.
No, that's what happened. That's not only does it work, that's what happened. And look, man, you're talking about Jared Kushner has dished out
the campaign chairman present if this is just a spur of the moment loose cannon thing?
Because Manafort is a loose cannon. He's a spur of the
three loose cannons now.
Here's my problem with Donald Trump. Those three dudes need resignation letters on his desk today, right now. If I was Donald Trump, I would pick the phone up 3 times and this would be the conversation, insert appropriate name here. I'd be like, oh yeah, son-in-law, how you been doing today, Jared? Yeah, would you please come to my office? Same thing with Manafort, same thing with Don Jr. Once they all got there, assembled, I'd be like, yeah, don't even bother leaving. Just the stationary's over there. Right, I quit, and sign your name on that and put it on my desk. That would be the end.
Manafort wouldn't have to resign because he already did.
Well, but he's still around. He'd be kicked the fuck off the premises. How's that? Excuse my language. He'd be kicked out. So there it is. And there's my outrage that he is doing the businessman thing to the point where he has. Why doesn't he have somebody this ruthless and this insanely willing to get the result in doing his tweets for him? I seen they had a thing, man. I watched a thing with this guy, this social media dude, And you can tell when his social media dude is doing the tweets, or he is at 6 o'clock in the morning or 3 in the morning. That's him. That's the president. The other times it's just, anyway, why don't he have that in people doing that or writing his speeches? Because he's letting these guys do too much, and they're effective, man. That's all I'm going to say. Here's what I'm outraged about, Britisher, that this is the only thing we know about. You think in your mind that this is the nadir, this is the big bombo? You think there's nothing else that freaking this?
No, I think this is what we know about.
If this is what we know, you can only imagine that what we don't know is they actually had Nikolai working for him, plotting to fucking cut her throat in her sleep while they were running against her. I mean, that's probably what
this is what we presently know about. We can only react to what we actually know about, what is revealed to us. This has been revealed to us now.
Donald Trump and Putin go around the corner and they turn into big lizards and drink single malt scotch.
Yes.
No, I just
blame Morangi.
Yeah, right. That's the good stuff.
It just, I just look at this and I just go, I am worried that Republicans refuse, kind of refuse to acknowledge that there's a problem here. In just the same way that I am worried that Democrats refuse to acknowledge that there's a problem on the other side. It shows that the system is becoming so polarized that the various sides don't even care about the rules anymore. It isn't that the politicians don't care about the rules anymore. Their supporters no longer care whether their politicians follow the rules anymore. That is the problem. Do you think
that I care that Hillary Clinton's campaign screwed Bernie Sanders through the DNC? Do you think I care about that?
I think you should.
I don't, and I don't. We've talked about it on another long time ago, but we talked about it, man. I don't care. If that's between them, that's their. This is the only thing I want to say is I'm not a Republican. I just think that this situation right here needs to roll forward. That's what I keep saying. They need to let Mueller do his thing. They need to dig up all the dirt and get it out. Get it out of the court of public opinion where all the hand wringers come out and we got him now. We got the billionaire, philanthropist, entrepreneur, president, self-made man that everyone said would never make it. We got him now. They've been saying that for fucking 50 years, Britisher, and they still ain't got him. So I don't think they're gonna. And I'm not outraged with Trump right now, other than I said those 3 dudes should go. I'm not outraged with Clinton and a lot of things she did, man. She's a shrewd bitch. I don't think she'd have been a great president, but who knows? Maybe she would have been really good.
I think she would have been an absolute catastrophe.
Yeah,
but
Lord.
What you urgently need is you need to kind of find some politicians who are willing to play by the rules. But you also need to do
such thing.
But what you need to do is you also need to find within yourselves over there a kind of care for the fact that your people actually play by the rules. Because if you don't care about that anymore, then basically it doesn't really look particularly. It doesn't look very. It doesn't look very good for your system, does it?
But no rules
hold out much hope if that by now is the state.
Look, you got greasy people doing greasy things, but at this point, no rules have been broken in this Trump debacle. No rules have been broken, Brett. If they were, that there'd be subpoenas already.
In intent, they have.
Pardon me?
In intent, they have.
Oh, man, intent. Well, then I'll go back and cite what just happened with Comey, man. It was a bad mistake, but there was whatever.
Yes, but then again, you're doing this famous card trick, whereby you're sort of saying, no, but in that case, you're doing that famous card trick that basically, here is a problem with a Republican. Oh, but what about the Democrat?
I didn't say that. Corruption. I said I don't care that either one of them do it.
But one side's corruption does not excuse the other side's corruption. It's as simple as that.
You got to have corruption in politics, Britisher. You can't not have it.
This is now pure devil's advocate, isn't it? Because I know for a fact that you don't believe this.
No, I don't think there should be any government. Only local governments that would be single municipalities, very, very centralized. I don't
Yes,
believe
but
in.
this is a kind of this is a kind of you know uh, this is a kind of a response ad nihilo, isn't it? That basically you're just basically saying, oh well, uh, in that case, let's not just have any government at all. But I mean, if you have government, you need government to be at least as clean as it can be.
Yeah. Well, it ain't going to happen with politics, Brett. It just isn't. And I wasn't trying to be that. That is how I feel. You have to have grease to get the wheels going. That's the best way I can say it. And these people are greasy. You're talking about definitely two real greasy folks, man. Kushner and Manafort. I would not want to go to dinner with either one of the men, but I'd hire them if I had need for their kind of service. Like ruthlessly getting something done. And you know, I don't know. For that part, we kind of need them too. He just needs to let them go and find other people. Keep it fresh, you know, rotate that stock every 6 months or so, keep the heat off of them. You know, you have a problem with that idea, with that thought. Because that's how I believe politics should run. You got to have greasy people. You got to have backroom deals. You got to have fat, greasy white men with big, expensive imported cigars, smoking 60, you know, drinking $60 a glass scotch, scratching each other's back. Or what the hell what do you got politics for? What's it there for?
Well, what can I say? I don't quite share your what can I call it? Non-idealism.
Well, yeah. And that foot, you got to listen. They didn't go out for ministers, mate. They didn't put in to be missionaries, did they?
Okay,
I mean, they put in to go
good
into the
point.
craziest possible vocation that a human being could aspire to. The
Yes.
lowest
And
down.
who is supposed to keep them honest?
But you can't. They're like the lawyers, man. You kill them all. It's the only way you keep them honest. You know why they bury politicians 8 feet
The
down, British?
public is supposed to expect certain standards of the politicians. And if the politicians are caught out, then that should be the end of those politicians.
Well, if
But
you
the fact
expect
that the
on this
public
side,
now no longer even care about it, that is part and parcel of the problem.
well, I care, but it's just the way it is. I think that the system would have to go away because there is this right-left paradigm. Myself, I like a good, strong leader that's willing to get it done. I don't really care. I'm not going to say the ends justify the means, but the ends justify the means, Brett. If the job's getting done for my country,
Well, in
diplomacy,
that case, if the ends justify the means, no problem. We'll send Tony Blair over. We've
Oh,
done with
Lord,
him. We don't
no.
want him anymore.
I don't want George W. Bush either. He's a blithering idiot, man. The only thing George W. was good for was he was a good monkey to dance in front of crowds and say funny hillbilly shit. You know, he could campaign.
The reason I bring this up is because effectively you could put that on Tony Blair's gravestone eventually. The ends justify the means, because that has been that has basically been his politics right from the outset.
They should put, but there were weapons of mass destruction on his gravestone. I see it. Was it in the week that was this time?
What was it? Oh Christ! It's Spike Milligan. Spike Milligan wanted on his gravestone, "I told you I was ill." But I believe actually in the end, the local priest refused after he had died to put that on his gravestone because he didn't want any jokes in his graveyard. But I don't know whether that hasn't since been changed, if you know what I mean, whether the bishop eventually intervened. But yeah, so I don't know whether he eventually got his wish and it got put on his gravestone or not.
Oh,
But
cool.
it was one of those things that everybody knew that yes, Spike Milligan wanted "I told you I was ill" on his gravestone.
That's hilarious. Do you know who Leslie Nielsen was?
Yes, yes, of course, yes.
Well, there's only one thing on his epitaph says "Litter Rip." That's all it says. You know, it says Leslie Nielsen when he was born and when he died, but then it just says "Litter Rip." He apparently carried around this little device that he had for years. It ran on batteries, and when you push it, it made the sound of loud, offensive flatulence.
Yep.
And he would wait till opportune moments when people were bent over, squatting down to get something. He would let her rip. So anyway, that was in America though, so there was no talk of not letting it on the gravestone. It was like, of course you put that on there. We're irreverent. Maybe that's the problem, Britisher. A reverence in this, because I want you to believe what I believe. I want everybody to believe what I believe because I think I'm right. But maybe it is an irreverence for the system. But in my mind, the system is so far broken that give me he who cheats less. I'll take that one.
Well, yes, but that at least would be some standard.
Well, it's a good standard. There's not much. If Donald Trump okayed this, if he was at the meeting and they told him stuff about Hillary Clinton, still wouldn't be breaking the law, and I still would feel the same way. I would say, like, this is it. This is what you got on the guy. All right, hail to the chief.
Well, I think we can agree that we're not going to see eye to eye on this one.
Well, fine.
You think I'm a sort of a naive little bunny rabbit on this one, and I think that you're a terribly cynical person who has kind of lost any faith in the republic that is the United States of America.
All right, man. I don't even care. That's fine. Let's leave it at that. I mean, that's fine with me. That's fine. I'm a little cynical about most things. I did see this. I don't really care much about that. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Did you look at the super dogs from China? Did you see anything about that?
No, I didn't. So
I'm just going to pop this on you then.
Okay.
There's this deal. China has taken dogs, and the reason they're using dogs is because to genetically engineer, to genetically modify or genetically enhance on a genetic level while it's an embryo of a canine is very difficult. One of the only things more difficult is a human being. And so that's why they're using dogs. So they took out this one part of the gene in the dog, and it's the one that regulates muscle growth. So these beagles are, instead of being 35 pounds or like 70 pounds, solid muscle. And China's not even joking about it. They're saying, yeah, we're doing this because we're going to do instead of Captain America, it'll be Captain China.
So basically, what they are saying is that eventually they want to do it with humans.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're saying that's the reason for the research. That's the idea behind the research.
Okay, well, I mean, good luck to them. I think they might find that they will discover endless difficulties and problems if they try and introduce something like that.
Well, for problems from who?
For Captain China, it's Jesus Christ! Look at that dog.
See that dog? It's a real thing. It's not Photoshop, Brett. And they're doing it. I mean, and they're not joking. They're saying that because this is the Chinese outlook.
What is he smashing there?
I don't know. The dogs are really tough. They're like the bone. They did something with the bones and the muscles. The dogs are twice as strong and twice as fast, and apparently twice as smart as the original dog. And
I would be surprised if they were twice as smart.
They're claiming a lot of stuff here, but the Chinese will. But remember how the Chinese think. To them, people are born in not. They don't really use the term caste, but they have their place, they have their job, they have their function. So to them, the idea of, well, so forget about it. Maybe the dogs are half as smart, or maybe the humans aren't as smart. As long as they listen and obey orders, what would stop them from doing it?
Well, we'll see how far these Chinese plans get, particularly once that economy hits the brakes, which is not going to be that far off.
Well,
because that is going to be serious problems in China. When it comes to that economy.
Man.
This idea that the Chinese economy is going to continue motoring on is a complete fallacy.
But I don't think they need it like we do. I mean, the government will continue to churn on.
Well, the government will continue to churn on, but they don't have any democratic accountability, which makes it impossible for the populace to kind of voice any disapproval, which basically means that it's like keeping a lid on a pressure cooker. And they might find things getting very, very uncomfortable once hundreds of thousands, if not millions and millions of people start losing their jobs. The Chinese economy is currently still 50% construction. It's absolutely obscene. Bad. They have by now pretty much built office space to provide an entire, basically this is empty standing office space to provide pretty much every man, woman, and child in China with an office, and they're still building.
You know, I've seen a lot on that, but I wonder how hard it would be for them to go back to agrarian life.
If you're talking about, you know, a bubble, then the greatest economic bubble ever to have been seen in world history is currently happening right before our eyes in China. They're trying to find all sorts of projects. So at the moment, the Chinese government is proposing to build what they call a new Silk Road, which is a railway line that is to run from China through, I believe, Kazakhstan all the way to Britain. And they want it to be financed with various loans and this, that, and whatever that the respective countries are supposed to take up. And I just look at it and I go, what's the point of the railway line?
Bring plastic junk.
We've got more than enough container ships that can move stuff more cheaply over the same amount of distance than a railway line. We don't need a railway line. The only reason they want a railway line is that it will keep Chinese construction companies busy for years to come. And they are desperate to find projects for their Chinese construction companies. I mean, you may remember, you know, the week that was a while ago, I mentioned they were building railway lines in Kenya. They're building stuff all over the place because they're trying to find more, you know, more work for their construction industry, because otherwise the whole thing will grind to a standstill. And meanwhile, they're still putting up more and more apartment blocks and more more office blocks, for which there is no need, for which there is no use.
They need the workers to have something to do, and they are communists.
Their entire economy. This is not the state, although half of the economy pretty much is state-owned. So the entire economy is something like 260% of GDP in debt. And they've acquired that in something like 10 years or so.
Yeah,
So this is a massive problem, and it's running out of control. And at some point, the Chinese economy is going to hit the buffers. And when it does, it is going to hit the buffers hard.
They don't make anything like Roman concrete, because I've seen their buildings just fall over like dominoes at times. You ever seen that? They like made a structural building.
If they come to a halt in that way, then super dogs are going to go right out the window.
Well,
because
and
it's going to go right back to basics then.
I put up that last picture because the finer print pointed out that the picture they were using in the article I was reading from, and I showed that, I was like, yeah, look at that dog. That's a whippet that had was born that way. Nobody engineered it to be that way. So that was just a titular picture they popped in there to make fools like me just believe that was one of their Chinese dogs. So that wasn't it.
It was a mutant, but it was a natural mutation.
Apparently, yeah. Well, so I mean, it's good to know when you're wrong, and I was wrong about that. But they are looking into it, and they're not afraid of saying why. And I don't know, Brett. I think that they will. I think that more so than even the United States government. The United States government is insane on the freaking defense deal, mate. I mean, out of control, insane. It could be cut 90% easily. Anyway, over there, I mean, they're not, you know, the state runs everything. They don't ask nothing. Everything would be cut off. All those buildings would cease. They'd ground the concrete up in the dust for other projects. And the people would either have to go and be agrarian and get a pig and a cow, plant some rice, or die.
Well, I
They
mean,
would continue with the projects.
the Chinese in that regard are also the reason why we've got all these comic book heroes in the cinema, by the way. Something for which I will never forgive them.
For what now?
Yes, the Chinese are also one of the reasons why we've got all those comic book heroes in the cinema,
Well,
which
how's
is
that?
one of the things I'm never going to forgive them for.
Yeah, but how do you say? I mean, that's what I thought you said. But how are they? You mean like anime and whatnot? How are they to what? What do you mean?
Well, Hollywood is determined to remain the global cinema maker, basically. They wish to remain top dog. You know, they don't want to be usurped by either Chinese cinema or by Indian cinema, you know, Bollywood that we've heard of.
Right.
You know, so basically they wish to remain global cinema. But previously, when you wanted to be global cinema, you were effectively catering for the Western world. It was effectively Europe and America and perhaps Australia and New Zealand and Japan thrown in. All the other markets were marginal. Now the second greatest cinema market in the world is China. And India must be coming up close behind. So now you must provide films that can be watched in those countries. And that means you have to provide something which they understand. And you have to understand that these people are 1 or 2 generations off the rice paddies.
Yeah,
so
from believing in monsters.
So for one, they're not necessarily that culturally literate. But at the same time, they're also not literate in Western culture.
Right.
So if you make Casablanca, they will watch it and go, who are the Nazis? Because they're not familiar with that. So we need therefore to make movies that are absolutely black and white, good and evil. And therefore comic book heroes have come to the fore. And it's all action over storyline. And yes, basically that is why we've had basically all these Marvel and DC comic books heroes and various others thrown in on top. That is where this fad for comic books have come from, because it is something that doesn't only sell in the US, but it also sells over there. Whereas if you try and make more conventional movies, then it will not sell there, because there will be so many cultural markers that we all understand as shorthand over here in the West, which they will simply not comprehend. Not because they're dumb, it's just simply because they live in a completely different cultural world, in an entirely different tradition and cultural environment. They won't understand.
Well, they may not be dumb, but you're also talking about a culture that even though they're just 1 or 2 generations out of the rice paddy, the vast majority of them believe that eating or drinking fermented rattlesnake or whatever poisonous snake in liquor will give you an erection, and they believe in acupuncture and cupping, and I mean, you name it. These people are like, you go to the doctor and a bruja waving medicine man comes out and shakes his stick at you, and it's like, if you're better now, go away, eat this root. And they still, that's the way they live. I'm sorry.
So no,
yeah,
yes,
but they don't get it.
Cool, no doubt never forgive me for what I just said, but there you have it.
No, I sent the link to Zero Cool just now. He's on his way. No, I don't know. It might be kickback.
I'll turn my loudspeakers down now, shall I?
No, I don't know if I'm going to send it. If I send it out to anybody, it'd be RPR if he's up for it. He sent me the last little thing about it's got something to do with your country. I wanted to ask you about, and I do see what you're saying. I mean, so that's the rise. It's Hollywood competing with, in Chinese cinema, and I don't know, Bollywood. I just don't get it. I don't know how do you think they're competing worldwide with us, Bollywood?
Well, they wouldn't necessarily compete worldwide, but they would be able to take over their markets, and thereby Hollywood movies would more than likely not get a look in. Do you understand what I mean? If they speak to India, to 1.3 billion Indians or whatever, and no Hollywood movies ever really get shown in that area. That area can then grow for Bollywood, but the Western movie industry doesn't get a chunk of that. It doesn't get a slice of that cake.
Because China, I see, could be a threat worldwide. They make some pretty good stuff in China. They've been doing movies for a while, and they do it well.
It depends how many kung fu movies you can stomach.
A lot of them are kung fu. Yeah. But I've seen some. I mean, I just watch weird stuff sometimes on Saturday. A lot of times I'm sitting around. But I've watched some propaganda movies from China, and man, I tell you, them people, it's just one step below North Korea, where they're telling them that that Kim Jong-un could fly, you know, and whatnot. He don't have a butt.
Lots of people in heroic poses, gazing toward the horizon.
Yeah, and it's these valiant. The one I remember most is these two valiant rice farmers, this man and this woman, and they're trying to have a baby for the state, and they're trying to be good. And then the imperialists are coming in to threaten their rice paddies. It's just a made up, you know, it's fiction. But it is obviously, it's put out by the Chinese government. It's a propaganda film. It's like feel good about your country film. We have them, you know, Pearl Harbor. I mean, I could start naming off movies.
There was a turkey.
Pardon me?
I never knew actually that the Americans had won Pearl Harbor until I watched that movie.
I've never watched that movie. Doesn't it have not Matt Damon, the other punk?
Is it Ben Affleck?
It does have Ben Affleck in it, right?
I think it does, yes. But as I say, if you watch that movie, you could be mistaken for thinking that Pearl Harbor was the day when the Americans defeated the Japanese invasion.
Mercy's sake. Oh. Well, it was. I think Pearl Harbor. I mean, we can't talk about that. You won't like what I have to say much because we knew they were going to bomb. We knew that was going to happen. I'm not saying they knew the exact day or hour, but they should have been much more prepared than they were. It was the Gulf of Tonkin incident of the day. It was a way to get the America, because they came out. They had us, because you talking about that thing I sent you from Cernovich being contrived and too prepared and too quickly out. Okay, Pearl Harbor hit. The next day in the United States, the #1 song on the radio was a song called "We're Gonna Slap a Dirty Little Jap." All composed like, "We're gonna slap a dirty little Jap," little happy little tune about killing Japanese. And so that was, they knew it. The whole propaganda, the Edward Bernays.
What you're saying is they must have been recording and distributing before the actual.
Sure. Especially back then, because they needed the record. They couldn't just wire it or download it. It's 1948, for goodness sake, or whatever it was. December 8th, 1948, day of the living infamy, and I can't remember it. Anyway, yeah, the wealthy people, the powerful people have to get what they want. They're going to get it one way or the other. I think the Chinese, they're going to get genetically modified human beings. They don't care how smart they are, Brett. They don't care if they, because listen, you want to talk crazy? I'll talk crazy with you. They are growing human embryos inside of sheep right now, inside of cows right now in China. And they're growing them for their organs. They harvest the organs when they're born, they say. But what's to say that they couldn't bring that fetus, that embryo to term and let it be, you know, because what would be better than having a closet with 5 or 6 of yous in there, Britt? So, you know, if you have a pesky kidney go out or need a liver, or the old ticker just isn't what it used to be, you can kind of take these things and put them into the real you that you care about.
Well, as you can well imagine, I'm somewhat skeptical about whether the Chinese are growing organs in cows and sheep.
Oh, they are. They do. They say they do. I mean, they do. They are.
I mean, for one, I would think pigs would more than likely be more suited to that due to their sort of closeness. Well, anyhow. I think your chuckle kind of reveals I've kind of come to a full stop.
Not gonna track you into anything like that. I mean, it's just, it could be, Britt. I was talking about this with Doppelganger one day, and because, you know, because I couldn't see, because here it is. If you just cut the, you know, the part of the brain off that would like let it know that it was there, at birth, at the stage where it actually went into the gestation tube or whatever it may be, where it could be exercised and all that stuff and given good nutrition to be healthy in case you need it. What would be the problem with taking some of my cells and making another me and do it? What would be wrong with that? Wouldn't that be good? That's it.
Well, strictly speaking, you would be still killing off a creature in order to kind of become a spare part.
Well, so how do you feel about abortion? Do you think a woman should be able to do that or whatever?
I think that yes, abortion should be acceptable, but that is not. But I think this is somewhat of a different ball game, isn't it?
Well, I don't, for myself, honestly, I don't see it really. I mean, especially if you cut the ability to know for it to be at the very beginning.
What you're saying is it wouldn't really be conscious. Yes.
No, give it the full on lobotomy. Just stir them up like scrambled eggs. Nothing there but the medulla oblongata, man.
I would have some serious moral problems with that, and I think once you more than likely would have been exposed to the sight of one or two of those creations, you would more than likely also be rather skeptical. I think most people.
What if we lived at a time where we knew that worked, and you and I were able to have a couple of spare Britishers or ogres in the back closet, just in case, like a quiver of you there, just waiting.
We never know how our moralities will evolve in the future as societies. So anything is possible, but I would say, judging from our current standpoint, it sounds a bit of a nightmare scenario, to be honest.
The chat's calling me barbaric and crazy. Matt Dodge says that's barbaric ogre. And somebody says Jesus ogre. Anyway, so maybe moving along. I'm saying if they could make superhumans or whatever, try to, and it's all goes back to this, Britt. I would not mind having to be able to live a long, long time. 2,000 years, 3,000 years, as long as that life would be good and it would be cool. Like if they could take my brain out, because they just had a head transplant on a dog. Talked about that. I don't think you were around. It was another one of these topics where you could go crazy with it. And this Swedish doctor, he took the head off the dog, and one dog put it on the other. Dog said, no, it's still fine. So in other words, they take the head off, and you've got your you growing now, and it's ripe. It's 22 years old, in the prime of its peak. And
so hang on, they moved one dog's head onto the other dog.
Yes, sir.
So given that the brain was now on the other dog, did the dog's head still understand the commands it had received when it was still on its proper body?
Oh yeah, in other words, could it walk and stuff?
No, basically, could it actually remember what it had known prior to?
Like sit, stay, all that?
Yes.
It was the same dog. It's just the head, the brain was still functioning as if it was on the body. So yeah, the answer to that I know. I'm just talking out of my hiney too, I should mention. As far as I know, yes.
I mean, this sounds really bizarre to me, and I'm surprised I wouldn't have heard of this. So I'm once again rather.
It's on a thing with Doppelganger. Will probably still have it. I'll get a hold of Dopp and I'll get the information for you. But it's real. And the dog, what they were saying is it had normal brain function after the transplant, after the head transplant. So here we go again. Now that you know that is a possibility, if we were now talking, and it is the year 2250. And it's like, we're still, but we met and okay. Would you still feel like you've had this thing, you've had the means to get it, and it's a part of you that see what I mean? If you could just take your head off every 21 years and put it on a 21-year-old you, I mean, come on, man. What's wrong with that?
I'm sorry. I'm not really. I wouldn't really be that keen on that idea.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Would it be you? You said that. So if this is the next question, it's the question of the wooden ship. if a wooden ship, a whaler 250 years ago, is plying the seas and doing what it does and is getting damaged in the South Seas and getting battered, and it's replaced board by board, but every board that's taken off and replaced is put away. If you then rebuild that boat out of the old parts, which one is the boat? The boat that you have or the boat that you rebuilt? You ever hear that before? It's a logical question.
Yeah, no, I fully understand what you mean. You know, basically, which is the copy? Yes.
Yes. I'm all for that, because a boat doesn't have a brain. That's the best example I could think of off the top of my head, so to say. But if you took, because let's face it, it's not the brain, right? It's not the 4 pounds of gray stuff like this big up there, right, Brett? It's not it. It's the mind. It's the you-ness of that. Because you could still have that brain, and one could still have that brain, but being a terrific head trauma, you know, that
you do know that there are kind of mini brains attached to some organs, like the heart.
Yes.
One now knows that there is some kind of neural function within the heart itself to kind of.
Well, you can go all the way down to your mitochondria, man, and the ribosomes.
There has been some interesting things that have happened with transplants in the past, whereby, wasn't there a chap who I think had a heart transplant, and then suddenly he became much more of a daredevil that he had never been in his entire life, and he couldn't explain it himself, and people around him kind of sort of said this was bizarre, that suddenly he took up things like parachuting and things like that, and it turned out that the previous owner of the heart
was a daredevil.
Was a complete daredevil.
Well, but Britisher, this is how I would explain that anecdote, is that once he had the heart transplant and he lived through that thing that most people would die from, his inhibitions at things that down deep he probably always wanted to do were lessened at the fact that he had already faced down death and came out on the other side with a new ticker. But because I'm sticking on the side that if you could take my head off, in my mind, that I would be that the new ship would be the ship, that the old parts put back together, the new ship would be the ship. If I could be rebuilt over time, I could go back to the 21. If every 21 years you could just take this off, pop it on. Of course, eventually you'd have a very, very old head.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
Very old, gnarly, scraggly, old head, Brett, on like a beautiful, perfect young man. That's funny.
But yeah,
I'm over it. I'm sorry for making you talk about this stuff. I thought it'd be fun.
I still think that these dreams of eternal life are completely futile. Wasn't it in Gulliver's Travels that at one point he ends up on an island where all the people are beautiful and live on forever, until he discovers they're all blind? Because effectively, you know, you cannot live forever without your eyes just conking out at some point.
Yeah.
So there was a certain sort of moral message within that, wasn't there?
Well, and I've also, you know, talked about it before. If you could even live 2,000 years, the chances of you making it 2,000 years without losing a finger is very, very slight. You have a very small percent. The chance of you making it through with both your arms is small. Your legs, your feet, your toes, because accidents happen.
I wouldn't be so worried about that. I mean, particularly if we follow your theory of constantly getting a new body.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Aside from that, I think your main problem would be one of going absolutely insane. Because I'm not sure our mental capacity is really built to kind of outlive too many lifetimes.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's possible. You know what I think? The antediluvians probably took off, and they know how to live for a long time, if not for what we can. Because remember, are there any immortal things on this earth that you know of? Living creatures?
Nope.
The lobster. There's a jellyfish. Also, everything that I know of lives in the sea. I believe the sea cucumber is considered immortal. If it doesn't get eaten, lobsters, if they don't get eaten or get a disease, they don't die. I mean, they know that they've gotten lobsters that are 2,000 years old. They were used to consider koi fish immortal because they lived oh, 210 years is a really old koi. Anyway, yeah, the thought is in mankind, Brett, because something is in us. That's why we're so different. If it was all about evolution and things changing, and that's why everything happened 6,000 years ago, because moments of enlightenment, and then you have the, revolutionary, you have all of these different stages as we talked about before. I don't know, man. I think that we were set back at one time, but it's in all of us, most people. And don't get me wrong. I mean, everybody would, I think if most people were realistic, don't you agree that they would probably say, like you did, that to live forever is incomprehensible?
Yes.
It'd be a bummer, really. It'd be
Well, I
like,
mean, have you ever seen the film Highlander?
yeah, the Highlander, yes, many
Yeah, the
times.
Highlander doesn't seem to enjoy himself too greatly.
No, and he's only like 300 years old, 200 years
Yes.
old. Right.
So, yes, I think basically we are all very much the product of our own time. And I think you can see that in quite a few elderly people, that they kind of feel a bit lost because time has moved on.
Yep.
And they haven't been able really to adapt to it.
You don't ever feel that way now, as young as you are, as young as I am. I feel that way now. Like time, like the ways have slipped on by me, and I'm just becoming an old man with old ways.
Now add 200 or 300 years onto that.
Oh, mercy.
And I think then you begin to, and look back at the technological changes that the last 300 years have brought about. Now add that on top of where we are now.
And I don't think it's going to end.
I think you would feel quite lost. So I really do believe that if you would live an extraordinary length of time, you would more than likely go completely insane.
I guess if I had to pick an age, I wouldn't want to do it and jinx myself. But it would be, in my way of death, my preferred way of death would be falling over in my garden of sudden death. Preferably ripe and old, very, very old. But I would be bending down, very old, very little eyesight, reaching to get a weed. And I would think something to this effect, Brett. Wow, that feels funny. And I just fall over deader than doggone.
I'm surprised at you there, because I was sure that if you would have had a chosen way of death, it would have been at the point of climax while you're in bed with the 12 playmates of the year.
No. That is something it would be fine with me. And of course, I'm one of the Maslow hierarchy fellas, man. I really fit right in there. That's on my top 3 list. But that's how I'd want to go. Not in a blaze of any kind of glory. Suddenly, and at a moment of peace. And the playmates would be nice, but it wouldn't be a moment of peace. Climax, would not be. I like slow times in life. I believe this, Britisher, that the reason, I guess, that I myself, because I'm trying to draw it out of you and make other people think of why it is that I believe a lot of folks have a tendency to not want to think that they're going to end at the end of them. But boredom is overrated. Or excuse me, is underrated. It's good to be bored. What's wrong with sitting around with an old book that you've read before, or just sitting around and thinking? Or I like to go for a walk.
There was a wonderful story. It's a little short story that I believe was made into a cartoon in Germany way back when, and it was called A Bavarian in Heaven. And if there are any German speakers out there, they will know what I mean. And it's basically a chap who always goes to the equivalent of the pub in Bavaria, and kills a few pints, goes home and kind of lives a bit of a peasant's life until one day he dies. And having really not got up to anything too bad, he goes to heaven. And he arrives there, and Saint Peter hands him a harp. And when he asks, well, what do you want me to do with this? He goes, rejoice. You are in heaven, rejoice. So he ends up sitting there on a cloud, with his little wings, kind of in his kind of, the equivalent of kind of little nappies, if you know what I mean. He's sitting there on his little cloud with a harp, and he kind of clings along on this harp, feeling absolutely ridiculous. And he's kind of looking around, going, is this all that's going on up here? you know. And I think once in a while, St. Peter comes round to check that he's rejoicing properly. And at some point, he just can't take anymore. And he's sitting there and he just starts tearing this harp, you know, and starts swearing. And yeah, the rejoicing gets louder and louder and more boisterous, if you know what I mean. Until eventually St. Peter is called to God, who is being disturbed by the goings on. And he basically explains that, yes, this particular Bavarian doesn't seem to be too happy up here. So in order to give God his peace, they decide to send him back to Earth, where he can reside in the pub and drink pints as a kind of special absolution, because they sort of think that's more than likely the closest thing to heaven he will ever get to.
Well, they could have just given a pint up there. That's the conception of a lot of people, though. And that's the, well, you know, if there is something out there that goes along with the Christian way of thinking, I mean, I think Christians got it wrong. That idea would kind of seem crazy to me if you consider that you'd be going to a different place with a being that you believe was able to make the world in 6 days. I don't think it would be boring. I think that the science level there for an earthling would be astounding. You know what I mean, Brett? I feel there would be other stuff to do and to see. If it was all clouds and harps, hell, I wouldn't want to go either. Send me to the pub.
Well, I think that was kind of the message of the whole little story, that he was basically saying, look, I don't think there'll be too many takers if you really want us all to sit on clouds with harps. It won't really work out.
Now that makes me think of that you did a little thing in the week that was with the sulfur. Where the heck was that at? That
was somewhere in Wyoming. Basically there was some old blue sulfur plant in the 1950s that was up until the 1950s that was working there, and obviously that closed long ago, and quite a lot of sulfur was left behind. So what was done is it was kind of worked into the soil. Like that, it's fairly safe. Except, of course, they believe that more than likely some spark from a motorbike exhaust. So there must have been some bikers, more than likely, you know, on dirt bikes going over the hills, and one spark seemed to set it alight. And yeah, they basically all had to go out there with their breathing apparatus on and whatever. And the fire department, some guy obviously filmed it. And it really looks absolutely unbelievable, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now in your piece. You did a couple of pieces that I'm going to bring up. You can probably think of at least one other one. It was about an ad. It was about a commercial.
And a certain advertisement. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm gonna show them this first. Let me see. Do you mind? I mean, I'm sure that you didn't copyright this. It's got your image on it. I use your damn image all the time. Did you see? That was my first try with the paint. I did find that I could take.
I mean, you can see there. That's the fire brigade or the police siren light there of one of the vehicles behind. But you can sort of see this strange creeping fire that is kind of rolling over the floor, and it just looks like some outrageous special effect from some movie. But yes, this is the real thing.
Right here where they twist up, because that is just but right here you get it. It's like them spirals. I mean, you say in this that it makes one think of the fires of hell, of Hades itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it immediately springs to mind when you see something like that, because it's just so outrageous. But it's just visually, it's so haunting when you see that. It's something I mean, I have watched it several times just because there is a strange beauty to it.
Yeah, I bet there's something else that you had out here that you watched a couple of times because there was a strange beauty to it. Funny you said it like that. This got me too. I love the way you did it this week, Brett.
Well, it's just when it comes to advertisements, or when it comes to videos being banned, this really sticks in my craw here in this country. They are just ridiculous. I mean, it was quite clear that this entire advert was inspired by Eric Pride's "Call on Me." Now, clearly, what it was is this is a product that is supposed to take care of help a lady keep her bikini line in trim. So that is why they're kind of focusing on a certain area. So that is the explanation for that. Because, I mean, you somehow have to get that part of the body into the advertisement if you're actually trying to advertise that sort of product. But of course, they immediately said this is overly sexualized. This is, it has the potential to cause offense. And I always feel, what is the potential to cause offense? It either causes offense or it doesn't. But if you're talking of the potential to cause offense, then you are talking of hypothetical offense. And frankly, I don't care for hypothetical offense.
But that was one of them stories that you didn't mind researching, wasn't it?
It was one of those stories that I saw and I thought, well, here is something that is kind of going to, let's say, loosen up the week that was a bit.
Okay, and here's the problem with censorship. I actually found something to tie in with it, but what I would ask is this: should there be a time frame that they could show a commercial like that? In other words, your target audience is obviously young women or women that wear bikinis or bathing suits like that. Should it be being played on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, when the kiddies are watching cartoons?
When it comes to that particular advert, I would say I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Me neither. I was just wondering.
Because I really do not think that this is in any way that this even touches the offensive scale. I think this is a complete overreaction with this advert. I can imagine that with certain adverts, one might say, well, perhaps this isn't, morning television viewing. But when it comes to this particular advert, I really struggle to see anything offensive at all. And I think in that regard, the entire problem actually lies in the minds of the people who are doing the censoring, because they are just so obsessed with finding filth that they see it everywhere.
Well, finding in certain kinds of filth, like over in your country, they really seem hung up on, they are here too, hung up on pornography, and if it's pornography and what kind of pornography, and that's too sexy and it's too much penis or too much vagina or too much breast.
But as I say, these days, as I said in the piece, these days it's important to keep this in mind, that in a way the objections of the religious right are long dead. They're long gone. The days of Mary Whitehouse, they have really long since passed. The objections that we get to anything like this these days are no longer based on old-fashioned morality and kind of, traditional objections to this sort of thing. They are entirely based on feminism. So we get the verbiage of feminism. We get words used like sexualization and things like that that are lifted pretty much verbatim from a piece from Anita Sarkeesian.
Well, then you got this right here. The New York Post is Walmart was apologizing on Monday after it says an appalling description of a product by a third-party vendor was made on its way onto the retail giant's website. This was on the retail giant's website now. They have these caps, and apparently these caps are made to protect a weave, which is predominantly used by the black community in the United States, at least. And the description is, it's nigger brown is the cap. It says that it's a stretch weaving net, weaving cap, wig cap, size medium, nigger brown. That's the thing. And so here's the now, I don't know who wrote it. I would say that you got something that could be one or two things, or probably many things, but you either have, because they're farming out descriptive writing, blurb writing, Brett. And
Yep.
So they have this Chinese dude, man. They're like, hey, Ping, Ming, Sao, Young, Chol, who writes English? Oh, I write English. I'm very good, boss. Okay, it's your job now to write blurbs. You write blurbs. And he's like, oh, this is a nigga brown,
Well, either that or it's somebody who is kind of way past pensionable age. Because nigger brown was actually an expression you heard once in a while. that
Oh
was
yeah.
not used in a racist way.
I don't think this is racist. I just think
I
what
mean,
I
there
think.
was there's just recently there's been a politician that got into trouble over here. She used an expression, what is it? Nigger in the woodpile.
No.
And clearly she used it in a way in which she never really consciously intended there to be a racial connotation. It was just the expression that she used. It's more than
Well,
likely
British,
expression she
may
may
I
have
ask
used.
something?
Sorry?
How can you possibly say Nick? How can you possibly use the phrase? And I'm not trying. I just was curious. How can you say nigger in the woodpile and it wouldn't be racist, sir?
I look at it from the perspective that we kind of look at expressions as things that are a whole, an entirety, rather than a collection of particular individual words.
So she was saying that there was some African lineage in a particular person with that phrase.
No.
How was the phrase used, so I can understand?
I believe the nigger in the woodpile. I mean, I wasn't familiar with the expression until I came across it. So forgive me if I get this completely wrong, but I believe it is something that is kind of a hidden that is a hidden thing that is basically not open to the eye, but it is still within something.
Okay,
And
all right.
it doesn't relate to a person. It can be that, for example, let's say some clever lawyers are trying to get you to sign a contract on which
And it's something that they're hiding.
on page 48 there is something that they don't want you necessarily to know that you're signing, but it's nonetheless there.
Okay, and then that phrase would come into play because we don't have to just gratuitously keep saying it. I think it's funny.
So no, as I say, that is where I think that the terminology, that is what the meaning of the terminology is. That is where it comes from, and I think that is the context in which she was using it. But she wasn't. I don't think that she was actually using it in a racist way. Now she's got into endless trouble with it. She's been suspended from the Conservative Party and so on. And to my mind, I think this is, again, we have to be seen to be doing this in order not to be accused of not being politically correct. I can see why, say, the party leaders would say, look, I think you'll more than likely have to say something about this. But at the same time, I can kind of understand how somebody who is not a racist could end up saying something like that, because it's an expression they simply know. Perhaps their parents used it. Perhaps they remember hearing their parents using it, or a teacher using it, or their grandparents using it. It may be something they use every 20 years, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So I think that's how people can suddenly get themselves into trouble when they use an expression like that, even though they have absolutely no intention of offense. And to me, what matters is the intention of offense. If there is no intention of offense there, then to my mind, there is no offense.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, I would say this. The reason I brung this up is because not only does it tie in to my mind with the commercial, because there's these things that we are not equipped to deal with according to some things, some ambiguous somebody. In Britisher, it doesn't seem to matter if you could take a religion out of it, then you have people that with the end thing. Because again, I'm not going to use this as a gratuitous chance to just to nigger it up. I'm not going to do that. But the fact of the matter is, if you can't tell people they can't, I grew up in the era of, on the Jeffersons, I'm trying to think of the neighbor's name, but the neighbor was a white dude that married a black woman, and the whole deal came up, and the husband uses this word, and you got Archie Bunker and all in the family, and these things were addressed. That yes, you had people like Archie Bunker that would say Negro in a certain fashion, certain vernacular, would use certain vernacular, and he's not a racist. And I hope that we can get back to that, because we don't need hall monitors in society, man. We don't need people telling us what time a commercial should be on, what kind of commercial should be on. I mean, as long as there's not like ongoing fellatio, they're not doing the 69. It's like, buy our beer and this will happen every night. Got like
No,
full.
I'm completely with you on that. I just basically think that this kind of self-policing that has happened in society, whereby we seem to kind of almost be ready to jump down each other's throats at a moment's notice. This person said a bad word. There is something wrong on television that doesn't, that my dogma doesn't approve of. Whether I approve of it or not is really irrelevant. Is this in keeping with the book? That sort of thinking, I despair when I see it. And that's why when I see a story like the FemFresh story, I immediately think this is something that I want to talk about. Whether it has, rather trim-looking ladies in skimpy attire in it or not, it is the actual issue at heart. That, why would somebody take it upon themselves to actually ban this? More to the point, why would anybody complain about this in the first place?
And you know what's much more important that I buried here? I just sent the link to your RPR in your mail. I'm going to have RPR join us for like the last thing I wanted to talk about today, because he's Welsh, and we always need a hall monitor, right? And we're deciding amongst ourselves that we don't. But this John McCain thing. John McCain had a boo-boo on his eye and apparently needed surgery because he's 80 years old. Now he's got a couple weeks off. They're using that as an excuse not to vote on this. Look, if you can hear my voice and you're American, if you voted Republican or you vote for the idea of not having the government tell you what health care to have and to provide your health care and single parent, all this stuff, well, then don't vote for these people that are not doing the repeal and replace. Listen to Rand Paul. Hopefully he runs again. He'd make a great president. No, and if he votes no on this stuff, man, I'm right with him. And I wish I could remember the lady's name. It's not getting me right off the bat. I believe she's from somewhere in the north, Connecticut or something to that effect. Oh, I don't have her name written down. Anyway, these two Republicans that are not going to vote for, they're voting no. Man, they should all vote no. No, and then bring it back up. Bring the original bill back up that was executive ordered in there. Vote on that and vote no again. And then just what at that point? Well, regulations need to be in place. But I'm just taking this point, Britisher, because I don't know what you have to say about our healthcare system, or if you even give a jolly ho-ho. I wouldn't imagine that you do. You have a good healthcare system. And for whatever reason, it does seem like Great Britain, that they have it down. They're the only ones that I've heard of too. They don't have it down in Canada, France.
I don't think we necessarily have it down. I think that if you have been in the NHS, you will realize it definitely has problems. The National Health Service over here is not at all the sort of paradise that Michael Moore would have you believe if you watch one of his films. But as I say, I mentioned it in the week that was, that there had been this, interestingly enough, an American study that had actually said that in terms of efficiency, the NHS apparently was the number one service in the world. But as I say, when it comes to outcomes, that was actually when it performed as one of the poorest. And you have to say, well, if you go to hospital, the one thing you would be concerned about most is outcomes rather than who looks after the paper clips. So there are clearly downsides. But I think, yes, that it's worth considering, particularly when one is talking the healthcare systems, that it does seem that there does seem to be strengths aside from weaknesses to a kind of centralized state healthcare system. Well, no, there's more weaknesses to them. If you look at the idea of a free and open market where I could buy insurance from anybody and they were allowed to compete with their prices, and then the hospitals were brought into account with the and it could be done with the market. They don't need government to do it. They could be brought into account for this overcharging and how much. I mean, everything is costed. It comes down to the same healthcare for a lot less money. Capitalism would reign. With the market, they don't need government to do it. Stream there. But we seem to have a Dalek here. Yeah, he's got a stream. He'll get it.
Yeah, sorry about that, Brent.
No worries, mate. And I'm winding down. I wanted to have
Oh,
RPR on.
talking of Daleks, given that we've got a fellow Briton here,
There you go. Now I'm gonna get ganged.
I was just wondering whether, in that case, there
healthcare.
might be an opinion on Doctor Who.
Oh, don't go there, Brit, please.
Too soon, is it? Too soon.
Well, what's the deal? I have no idea what you mean. I know the show.
You've not heard?
No.
Yeah,
Basically, they've
Doctor
introduced the latest Doctor Who, Mr. Ogre. And you have to understand that Doctor Who now, the TV series, is 54 years old.
Yeah, right.
And the BBC, of course, is this kind of super politically correct institution that some time ago introduced all these quotas, 8% disabled, 8% gay, 50% women on screen, 16% blacks and Asians must be on screen and within their staff, and so on. So they're now struggling to sort of, make up these quotas. So guess what? The latest Doctor Who is a woman.
You're shitting me.
No. So after 54
you were going to tell me it was a black chap, but that's even worse.
So after 54 years, suddenly Doctor Who is a woman. Now, I'm not a Doctor Who fan, so it really doesn't. But there are quite a few people who are Doctor Who fans who are just going, what's the bloody point?
Oh, mercy. Well, there you go, Brits. What do you think about that? Or, I didn't know that, but that's tampering with something that's very British.
Well, the Doctor is meant to be asexual anyway. Who gives a shit if it's a male or a female? Not that I've watched it for years, because I lost interest back in the 80s in Doctor Who because it was crap. And then, as far as I'm concerned, from what everyone else is saying, it's still crap. So it doesn't matter who plays the part. It's going to be crap.
There's people here that would kill you for saying that. They love Doctor Who so much they worship that show.
I think one of the things that is important in that regard is looking at it from a TV license fee payer perspective. And that is that Doctor Who is just about the only remaining franchise that the BBC owns, of which they make any money abroad. So basically, if they fail to make that money will have to be made up by other means.
License fee. Your license.
Yes. So as such, they've ruined Top Gear, once they lost Clarkson and people like that, which was previously, the penultimate franchise they still had that was of any international interest. Now they've just changed one of the basic markers of one of their only remaining franchise. So basically, they know that people like it the way it is, and they know that it sells abroad. And now they've suddenly changed the way it is. And you just go, from a business perspective, this isn't very wise. But then this is more than likely not about business. This is about dogma.
Well, and the British are, besides that, when you say wisdom in business, I do not think of the BBC with that context at all.
True enough. True enough.
Although, I'll tell you what, it wasn't the BBC. Like, I'd have to look. When I think of Alistair Sim, do you know who he was?
Oh, yes, very much so, yes.
So when I think of them old movies he was in where he played the detective that always busted everybody, who was it that made those? That wasn't the BBC.
I don't remember Alistair Sim being in TV series.
Your film industry was gone after that era. I mean, I don't know of any films coming out of England that I could mention right now at all. I know a few from the old days. They did a Christmas Carol, man. That's where I first found out.
Alistair Sim is the greatest Scrooge ever. There's no doubt about that. Yes,
by leaps and bounds, the ultimate Scrooge for sure. He did it on stage, and he also did it. There was an animated thing, and I don't know. I'm getting crazy with this, but the BBC is ruining your all's culture with that. Why would you have a quota for the cripple and all that stuff? You're taking merit out of it and saying that it's no longer by merit. You're intentionally making a decision that will in no way make your organization stronger. If you got a cripple over here, Go ahead, man.
Well,
That's
the
just
BBC definitely want to do it, but it is not entirely all on the BBC's shoulders, because the last time the BBC charter was renewed, you see, this is something that has to be renewed by the state every 10 years. So the last time that Parliament renewed it, I remember seeing clips being played where they had to, where the directors of the BBC and whatever had to answer for the BBC at a parliamentary committee. And they were constantly being told by these parliamentarians that, yes, they see them renewing the charter, but only if the BBC does something about diversity. And they used diversity again and again and again. And it was a sort of mantra, as though they were kind of some kind of religious cult. And the BBC just kept on agreeing, oh, yes, we will, we will, we will. So in that regard, clearly the BBC is completely possessed of this diversity thing, but it is also being imposed on them, whether they like it or not, by their political masters in Westminster.
Oh. Well, I don't understand a lot of this British stuff, but I do know that the culture thing, I can't imagine if you're crippled or if you're black and crippled and a transgender, but you're the best at what you do, you're the best camera person, whatever. I got camera person because you got the bogey, for the smooth rolls, whatever. Then you got to have the job. But if you're starting out with a sheet that says this, if your hire sheet says more than this is the position that needs filled. So now it says these are the positions that need filled, and now all of these percentages. You're starting with a prerequisite, and it takes away the ability to have a good staff. It's as simple as that.
Well, one of the best positions I ever heard the BBC filled, and this is 10 years or more ago, was that they actually, and this is not a joke, this really did happen. They hired a director, a blind director.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And you can't but help but feel that surely if you're working in anything that is audio visual, you ought to at least be able to see the product.
Yeah, imagine.
But yeah, so as you Americans would say, go figure.
Yeah. Well, what I'm thinking is it would also push the agenda this way, Brett. So if you and I are trying to fill that, you and I are now working as producers for this, and we have this quota. Well, we would be looking for black, homosexual. You would look for a crippled black or crippled Asian, because you could fill more than one percentage point with that. You see what I mean?
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, that would mess things up so bad. We would have to spend so much time thinking those kind of things over. It just could not put together a good staff. This is something that has to do with kind of like with quotas that RPR sent me. I'm about to get out of here. I got to do a few more things. I don't want to. I've been wailing it the last couple of days. Saturday is the day I take off by choice, just for my Jewish blood. It makes me feel good to take Sabbath off. It just does. But I was glad to, because all the bending over and I'm building the fence and I'm doing a lot of stuff. I'll go on about that because I'm tired, man. I wish that I was just not even rich. I wish I had something to offer a farm hand. Like, if anybody can hear me and you're from around here, come on over. I'll give you a job if you'll work for nothing, is what I'm saying. I'd like to have it. But this is almost a quota, and I want to know what you think about this, RPR. You haven't said much. I just know you're Welsh. It says the National Assembly will need to know basic Welsh by 2018. So what is this about, RPR? What's the deal with this?
Well, it's the Welsh Assembly. It's basically absolutely madness. I've seen a lot of big companies do this since I've worked in retail for a lot of years. And what they'll do is they'll take people's jobs and change the title of jobs and then make them reapply for their own jobs with the new criteria involved. To me, this is just absolute outrage. The simple fact is you've been doing that job for years, perfectly, and all of a sudden, just to meet a quota, because that's all it is with the Welsh Assembly, they want more people working there that can actually speak basic, not even fluent, just basic Welsh. It's absolutely fucking, it drives me nuts, actually, the fact that something that is part of the British government is allowing this to happen in Wales. And I'm not sure if you've read through the article properly. It's only a short article anyway.
Yeah, I've read it.
Well, as I just said, you know, it's to reapply for their own jobs with the new upgrade, you know, with the ability to speak basic Welsh and understand basic Welsh.
But this has been, this is now for the Welsh Assembly. Hasn't there as such already been a rule in place that if you worked for Welsh government or for local councils in Wales or whatever, that you had to be able to speak Welsh?
No.
No, I thought I'd heard that somewhere some years ago.
It's not necessarily, well, up until now, it hasn't been a requirement. It's a nice to have, like with most jobs, you know, it would be nice if you had this, but
okay.
If you don't, go with it.
Well, I mean, it's okay. Do you know anything in Welsh? Can you say like hello, goodbye, anything?
My Welsh is absolute rubbish. I can't, to be honest, I can speak better Spanish than I can Welsh.
Can you give me a word? Can you give us like a word?
Bore da, which is goodbye, I do believe it is. Krasiau, which is welcome.
It's completely different.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
So my problem would be
that's why I say I know no Welsh.
Well, they're not defining basic here. That would be my biggest problem. So, in other words, if you could say, hello, my name is such and so, and where's the bathroom? And the bathroom's over there, and where can I buy a ticket? And how do I get over here? Which way is right and left? That basic, like very basic. But if they're talking about basic, like conversational, I don't know, man. That seems pretty authoritarian to force somebody to learn a language.
Well, this is my argument, the study of the Welsh language. There are 24 different ways of using the word yes, depending on the phrasing. And
it also is not something that lends itself to the English-speaking tongue too well, does it?
It doesn't, no. It's the Welsh language. Well, there's 3 different dialects. The South Walians speak a different dialect to the North Walians.
Well, that's why I wanted to hear you say at least a word, too. It doesn't even have, like, can you imagine that Spanish and Italian, they at least flow off the tongue similar? That didn't even flow off. That didn't sound anything like English. It's a completely different thing.
It is. The Welsh.
I should have listened to some Welsh before I got on here, because I'm imagining like Gaelic. Gaelic is nothing like English. It's not like you could know English and pick up some Gaelic, maybe a word. I don't know. I don't know of any.
Perhaps you can check out the link I just sent you. The longest place name anywhere in Britain.
Oh, that's where I'm thinking about this. You brought this.
Lampathilio Ethlaka. Well, here you go. I can't even pronounce it. It is Lampathilio. Can I just say it in English? It would be much easier.
Yeah, I would say in English.
I think it transfers to was it the town by the river next to the church of something. Even in English, it doesn't make sense. The name does not make sense even when it's translated into English.
It makes me think of A Prairie Home Companion with Garrison Keillor. He talks about a place in Minnesota called Lake Woebegone, and Woebegone's an Indian name. Woebegone. It means place where we waited for you all day in the rain, but you never showed up. Only this is a really, really long word that means something.
Oh, the name of translate as St. Mary's Church in the hollow of the White Hazel near the rapid whirlpool, and the Church of St. Alias of the Red Cove.
You're shitting me. That's what that. So it means.
Is your position really, RPR, that Welsh is a language that should just be allowed to kind of either try and stand up on its merry legs, and if it can't, then it should die?
That's what I'm getting. I'm getting
Welsh language. I don't want the Welsh language to die by all means. I want it to go like the Scots and the Irish.
Kind of state supported.
No, I don't think it should be state supported.
Well,
If
but
you want to
then the end result of it would really be that it either survives on its own or it dies.
That's would be my argument. The fact that the Welsh language, if you're going to be a diehard Welsh person, then you learn it on your own merit, and you carry it forward.
You wouldn't have to learn any of it at school, and there would be no requirement to have it for any jobs. So you would basically go back to where it was prior to, you know, the Welsh Assembly.
Oh, yes, basically.
This is going to sound like
I can't stand the Welsh Assembly.
This probably will sound like a bad question, but I got to ask it. As a Welshman, is it okay? Is being a Welshman, is it like being Irish or Scottish? Is it that much different than being an Englishman?
I would say there is a slight honor to being a Welsh person, because we have a slightly different way of things. But this is the biggest problem I see, is Welsh is not our primary language. There's only a small percentage of people in Wales that can actually speak fluent Welsh properly. And even those, because I said there are 3 different dialects of it, there is problems when they try to talk to each other in it.
Can I ask you this? I forget her name. You'll possibly know it. The leader of the Welsh nationalists.
Leanne Woods.
Yes, that's the word. Do you feel that she deliberately exaggerates her Welsh accent? Because I do.
No, that seriously is not exaggerated. People from that area of Wales do actually speak that thick.
Because at times
even their English is that thick.
At times she sounds, to my mind, as though she's got an Italian accent. Because to my mind, she's deliberately over-exaggerating her Welsh accent in order to sound more Welsh than her Welsh rivals.
And Zona's saying, hilarious, the British government spent generations stamping out the Welsh language, and now they're trying to reimpose it. I didn't know anything about it. So what's the deal with the Welsh? They've actually fought the British at one time, or the English at one time or another?
It's a long, very long time ago.
Since we have a Britisher and an Englishman and a Welshman here, I guess that maybe we don't want to talk about it. Is that?
I really don't think there are any. I don't think there are any axes to grind, because it's so long ago that by now the axes would bind. Even the grindstones would have.
Well, you know, there's still some Southerners
by the wayside.
There's still some Southerners and still some Northerners in America that are like, you know, the South rise again and the North, blah blah blah. I mean, so it's
yes, but that was sort of 1860-ish, wasn't it?
Not one too long ago.
When it comes to the Welsh and the English, I mean, how many years would this have been ago? I mean, we're going back an awful long way, aren't we?
So help me understand that they spent time trying to stamp out the language. What did they mean by that? This Zona. I
don't know. I mean, would that actually already predate the Victorians or RPR? Would you know? I mean, would the Victorians have actively sought to, do away with the Welsh language, or would by that time English have already taken over anyway?
The crushing of the Welsh language happened during the reign of Henry VIII.
Okay, so we're talking.
It was him that was responsible for the
century.
Yeah, we're talking 14th, 15th century. Yeah, because as you know, he crushed a lot of churches throughout the country. You know, with the changeover from Catholic to Church of England.
The raising of the monasteries. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're aware of the Monmouthshire uprising.
Okay. Yep.
You are. Yeah. Well, prior to that, of course, I'm not sure if you knew, but the Principality of Wales had to hand a state over to to England. And of course, all the paperwork was done in Oxford. And it was it was a feud between two Welsh brothers that's caused the county I live in, which is Gwent, if you're Welsh, or if you prefer to be English, you call it Monmouthshire. That's why Monmouthshire and Gwent actually change every 18 years, is because of that little argument. The paperwork involved.
It's a bit like Derry and Londonderry, is it?
Yeah, Derry and Londonderry. What? What do you put up now, Olga?
Oh, I had it up.
This is a story we were talking about before. I don't know why it suddenly found its way back on screen.
Somebody, while we were talking about it, said they broke their rib laughing. I thought it was funny too. It just goes back to words, languages being stamped out, not being able to say what it is that you want to say, how you want to say it.
Yes, but if you need 28 syllables or whatever it is just to pronounce your own town name, then perhaps you can see why Welsh was on losing ground to start with, really. That it perhaps didn't suppressing, but it's just not that practical.
Well, I hope they always have their own language and fight over how it's supposed to be said and can't understand each other. I mean, I'm just that kind of person. I would hope their culture it's already outlived King Henry VIII. I hope it lives another 1,000 years.
Well, it probably will, but I wanted to go the way of the Gaelic language, the Scots and the Irish. You know, they speak it without it being pushed by their own governments.
Well, but in Northern Ireland now, there is an attempt to get it pushed by the government, isn't there?
Really?
That's that is one of the reasons that Sinn Féin and the DUP currently are quarrelling with each other, because Sinn Féin want the Irish language to be given some kind of official role, and the DUP are dead against it.
Yes, and as you can see from what is happening in Wales, this is the things to come.
This is the result of that, yes.
Yeah, you give the people a little. Well, shoot, I shouldn't say that really.
Wasn't there? I think this was mentioned on Have I Got News for You. There was some sign on a roundabout in Wales, because so few people in Wales actually speak Welsh, and because all the signing needs to be dual language, even though everybody speaks English. That basically, it's as if they've kind of got translators to whom they can send this stuff, who then basically tell them what the Welsh signage should be under the English. And apparently on some Welsh roundabouts, there was some sign pointing to some local landmark or whatever. And then underneath was the same line supposed to be in Welsh. And because it had been sent to some language consultant or something like that, and something had got mixed up, they ended up with this guy's answering machine message on the bottom of that sign. And apparently for months, if not years, thousands or tens of thousands of people drove past that sign in their cars, and because nobody understood Welsh, nobody realized that it was wrong, until one day someone came upon it and just burst out laughing and took a photo of it, and it then made the press. And that's how it turned up on Have I Got News for You, because it was someone's answer phone message saying, "I am sorry, I am not in right now, blah, blah, blah." But that kind of is the perfect example of how ridiculous this artificial pushing of the Welsh language is, because there is nobody there to understand it.
Exactly.
It's as if you would basically tell all the Canadians that now they can only hold an official post in Canada of any sorts if they also speak French, because there are some Canadians who speak French, even though the overwhelming majority of them do not.
They fought for that.
Yeah, it's just absolutely obvious.
Everywhere.
It's also as if you would basically tell, an American state that they all now have to be able, if they want to have a position in the official, in any kind of official position, they would have to be able to speak the local Native American language.
Exactly. And as
try and sell that to the local population and see how well it goes down.
Yeah, even if you try to push it to the Native Americans, you know, there are quite a few tribes, I do believe, and each of their own dialects is completely different.
Heck yeah.
I hope I at least get brownie points for saying Native American, even though it almost kills me.
Yeah, well, I thought you were just trying to mock me. You were prodding me.
Because as far as I'm concerned, it still is Indians.
Well, they're Indians. That's what they call themselves in most cases. There's not a whole lot of that group, be it whatever tribe they were from.
So they're not too politically correct. Wasn't there some kind of survey done among the Indians to see, to try and find out how outraged they were about the Redskins?
Oh yeah.
About the sports
that
team.
about 10 times.
And it turned out that they weren't actually that bothered.
Well, the last one they did said that it was like 50%, 50-50, but they had to take about 10 tests. The first couple of times they did it, it was 90%. Here's the thing. When they did a study, there's a great documentary called Real Indian. It might be called Real Engine. Anyway, one of those. And if you take a bunch of Indians and you take them to the movies and you show them a cowboy and Indian style Western, they not only love it, but they identify with the cowboys. It's kind of strange, but it's not even self-deprecating. It's only because their culture is so into being Britisher about everything and being what's right. And so they always identify with what's right. So when they hear that their name's being used to represent fierceness and indomitability and, to be for a football team, they don't have a problem with that as a rule, man. It's very un-Native American. I'm not going to last much longer, folks. This has actually been really cool, Britisher, but I'm going to give you a chance here to put a cherry on top. I'll give you a little hint. Tell you a little secret. I'm probably, in my final word, I'm probably going to say something about the Donald Trump thing, but I'm going to be very honest about it when I do. Thanks a lot, RPR, for swinging by, but I got about 15 minutes.
Yep.
So I'm now supposed to pull something out of my hair.
We've been building up to this the whole time. You're so slick with that self-deprecating. Oh shucks, I'm not sure if. And then you always do so good.
Well, there was one there was one particular story that kind of warmed my heart a bit over the weekend, and that was to see something happen that gave all us old wrinklies a bit of hope. And that was to see Roger Federer win Wimbledon at 35. And in the next few weeks, he's going to be 36 years old. And one thinks because Murray and Djokovic are injured, that he stands a good chance of possibly making world number one, which kind of may be the reason why a certain John McEnroe, or Johnny Mac, as the ogre likes to call him, balked at the idea of being asked to confirm that Serena Williams was the greatest tennis player of all times. Because at 35 years old, Mr. Federer has just won Wimbledon for the 8th time. It's a kind of scary thing to see. But at the same time, what kind of made me think when I saw it was, why is it that we actually have this not adulation, but why do we take such joy in seeing others succeed in this way? And I think it is because they kind of remind us of the ultimate capacity that is within us all. That basically, if we would take ourselves back to when we were 4 years old or whatever, and we get the right run of luck and whatever, we could have been Roger Federer. And I think that's what kind of fascinates us within, that basically when we see an astronaut, when we see a Formula One driver, when we see a great artist, when we hear a great musician, we kind of know that to a certain extent it is a part of us that we're watching. That it is kind of a representative of the greater humanity within us all. And that is actually what holds the fascination to us. So yeah, I think that's my sort of 2 pence worth, and I'll sort of hand it on over to the ogre.
Man, I appreciate it. Your check's in the mail. That was wonderful. And it makes me think about what I was going to say. It really does. Here's where I'm at with politics in general. If something bad happens to someone that we love, if someone that we love comes in and they're even if they've caused this trouble on themselves, they've come in off the street and they're addicted to heroin and they've sold themselves to acquire their drug of choice, and they look terrible. I mean, the first thing we do is we put a blanket around our loved one, and we try to bring them in and kind of bring them back into the fold. And we always, as humans, we should strive to think of the nobler side of this person, even on an individual level. So when I say that all politicians are greasy and whatnot, as I did very boldly, and I still feel, I want to try to hold up the nobler side of these folks, even of Bannon and Kushner, even of Don Jr., this insane kid that's had everything he's ever wanted and wanted to be a freaking bartender and live in the woods in a trailer. I mean, just no more power to him. Maybe he should go back there. Maybe not. I don't know. But I want to hold up the more, well, that side that the Britisher was just talking about. I want to hold up that side that we could all, as much as we all have a piece of that race car driver, or we can aspire to these things, we all have a piece, whether we like it or not, of these kind of oilier, greasier fellas. Like I got to say, Bannon and Kirchner for sure. But hopefully, as this debacle progresses in our country, we can, as a society, really start focusing on what matters. And this situation, it does matter. We shouldn't, as a whole, as a group, we shouldn't say that it's okay to do underhanded things to achieve very high office. It really should be beneath the office that's being looked for, being seeked, if that's a word, and also beneath the person seeking said office. It should be beneath that. So, let's move forward. I'm not going to say much else about that, but, go United States, go Republic. I love the Republic. Forget about democracy. It's a tool of, you could never have socialism without democracy. That's Stalin, I believe, said that. Might have been Lenin. So remember, be good to your friends and family, your loved ones. Be quick to say you're sorry, folks. Be even quicker to accept an apology, especially when what that person has done seems so huge, you'll never be able to forget about it. Because you know what, constant viewer? When you least think it's going to happen, your friends, your family members, your loved ones, your life, everything you hold dear will vanish before your very eyes. Bye.